Hey, Michael Church, Crawl Space Ninja. Today I want to share with you the first video of our series on crawl space problems. So this is going to be a pretty in-depth series, probably be 6 videos or so over the next 6 weeks. But these are some really important videos that I feel all homeowners should know about their crawl space. Some of the information will even bleed over into basements and things like that if you've got a flooded basement or whatever. But it's mainly going to be focusing on crawl spaces. So hopefully you'll like this series. Like I said, this is going to be video 1. So let's get started. So what you're going to learn in this series, as I mentioned before, is what are the major problems of the crawl space. We're also going to discuss overviews of the solutions of how to fix them, as well as cover some bonus materials like some crawl space repair myths and different things like that. By the way, this is Dom. When you get real confident in your crawl space, this is some of the pictures you can expect to take of yourself in the crawl space. But whenever you all fix your own crawl spaces out there, we hope that you'll share those pictures with us before and after. And of course, we'd love to have you as a guest on our YouTube channel to discuss what all you went through to repair your own crawl space. If you're not familiar with me, I don't know that I've ever gone into a deep dive about myself, but basically, we started a Crawl Space Ninja in 2005. I was focused more on air quality, which is why I feel like we should repair crawl spaces, is to improve air quality. I am the founder of Crawl Space Ninja. I'm an author. I recently wrote a book that has about 61 reviews now on Amazon. It's taken off pretty well. It's called Crawl Space Repair Myths Busted. I'm a YouTuber, of course. I'm a dad of 2 teenage boys, a husband, and a U.S. Navy veteran. So I just wanted to say hello to each of you and share a little bit about myself. Also, what we do here at Crawl Space Ninja is, we fix problems in the crawl space, basement, and attics. And a lot of times this involves hot, humid, nasty, moldy, disgusting work. As you can see, we got 2 ninjas here that came out of a pretty nasty crawl space. So if you're planning on fixing your own crawl space, this could be what you look like. We are headquartered in Knoxville, Tennessee. Like I said, we specialize in crawl spaces and basements. We're also pretty good at attic encapsulation. We're one of the few contractors that focuses on attic encapsulation across the board. We are currently in 6 states, looking to expand, of course. And how we expand is we introduce people to our franchise model. This is Cece and Mimi in Nashville, Tennessee. They became customers of ours and then decided they wanted to join our Crawl Space Ninja family. We also do these videos to help those of you out there that want to DIY their own crawl space. We have a Crawl Space Ninja DIY store, as well as a franchise website if you want to learn more about that. Some other resources that I talked about is our YouTube channel is very popular. We have over 40,000 subscribers on there. We got the DIY store, as I mentioned. We also talk about the book. This is a bit of an older picture of the book. We're now over 60 reviews if you want to get that on Amazon, as well as we do one-on-one video consultation. If you have a problem that you're not sure about or you can't find the answer on our YouTube channel or our website, I'm more than happy to do a one-on-one video with you at buymeacoffee.com/CS Ninja. We also, as I mentioned, have the franchise website, our service website at crawlspaceninja.com. We have a really popular blog that a lot of people like to research and look at. And of course, you can also post an Ask a Ninja where we try to answer your questions either with our DIY team or through a video. So all of that out of the way, let's get started with the number 1 problem I think in every crawl space that every homeowner should address, and that is high humidity. So high humidity is, in my opinion, the biggest problem that we face because it affects every part of the house. Standing water affects the crawl space, of course, and we'll get into that a little later. But high humidity can be transferred to the living space through the ductwork. It can be absorbed by wood and cause all kinds of problems. So high humidity is very common in crawl spaces and basements, of course, especially if you have a ventilated crawl space, you live in an area that's humid. a lot. Here in Knoxville, Tennessee, our average humidity is easily 70 to 75% year round. It may be dry at noon, but normally in the mornings it's really foggy. In the evenings, when it turns a little cooler, the humidity starts to spike up a little bit. Even today, it's 90 something degrees outside and 80 something percent relative humidity outside. It's a hot July day here now. But even in the wintertime, you got rain, you've got different things that affect humidity. So Knoxville and Tennessee in general is high humidity. Now, if you live in a part of the country that's low humidity, you may not have, an average high humidity, but you still have high humidity days and parts of the days, which can still affect the crawl space. And what humidity does is it can be affected by water leaks, foundation water intrusion problems, high water table, outdoor humidity, and rainfall. Humidity can also be high during a drought. So we were interviewed on the news many years ago. We had a drought here in East Tennessee, and the humidity was still off the charts. So just because you're not getting any rainfall does not mean you cannot have high humidity. And of course, this picture is to try to be funny about this person living in a humid environment, and this humidifier is to take care of the plants and all that. But you do not want this kind of environment in your crawl space. You don't want a high humid crawl space because it can really affect the rest of your house. One of the ways that humidity really poses a huge problem is by condensation. When you have cold ductwork, cold supply lines, different things like that, the mix of high humidity with an efficient AC system or cold building materials can compound that problem. Ducts will sweat, creating even more humidity. So you got humidity coming in, it starts to condensate, that condensate starts to evaporate and then creates even more humidity. Rim joists can even sweat due to dew point and high humidity problems in a crawl space. We have seen it where it's 60 degrees in a crawl space, negative 12 degrees outside, and that rim joist isn't insulated. There's no thermal break there, and that dew point right there where that cold and hot meets, it just explodes with moisture, can grow a lot of mold in that rim joist. So that's the biggest problem with high humidity, is it creates more humidity through condensation that can leach into the wood and surrounding area, even go up into your house. This is Brian from April Air, and I thought he did a great job explaining dew point. And it's not one of the easiest things to explain. Even if you Google dew point, it's kind of difficult to decipher, if you will, the way they try to explain it. So I want you to hear what Brian has to say about dew point. I think it's a great explanation of dew point, and I'm going to put a link to this full video down below. I'm just going to play a snippet of this video, but make sure you watch this full video. There's going to be a link to it down below.
And dew point, Michael, is the temperature at which the air is 100% saturated with water. So that means that at that temperature, the air cannot hold another drop of water. So let's use an example to kind of bring relative humidity and dew point together so that it's easy to understand. If you had a 65-degree dew point and the temperature outside was 65 degrees, your relative humidity would be 100%. So it's important because dew point is basically the point at which you start to see, and we use the term dew. You look out the window and you see dew on the grass. That's because when you have the dew point outside, for example, it might be 55 degrees, but the grass and the ground is only 50 degrees. Since that ground is colder than your dew point, it can't hold the water. So you get that dew on the grass when you wake up in the morning. And similar to in your home, if you have a foundation wall or a HVAC ductwork that is below your dew point, so if it's a 55-degree dew point and your ductwork or walls are at 50 degrees, you're going to get condensation on there. And that's another reason why it's important to have moisture control solutions so that we can prevent that from happening.
I thought that was a fantastic explanation of dew point. And one of the nice things about the April Air dehumidifiers is they can actually operate on dew point or relative humidity. I think they come standard operating on dew point. So they are trying to keep the space as dry as possible. So let's look at some effects of what condensation and high humidity can look like. Now, these are actual pictures that we took here in Knoxville. This was a It wasn't a standing water issue. It wasn't a plumbing leak. This was a condensation and humidity problem. As you can see, this insulation here is just soaking wet. It's got tons of moisture all over it. It's just horrible. So you can see that this is actually starting to give off moisture back into the air. Even this mold, this wood that's covered with wood rot fungus, you can see moisture built up all along here. And this is a newer home with pine wood. It cannot withstand what's going up against this with this wood rot fungus. So the entire foundation is starting to be eaten away. And most people, they're like, oh, well, I didn't have a standing water problem. I don't really care about humidity. This is what can happen when you don't pay attention to humidity in a crawl space. So make sure that if you are concerned or start to feel bouncing floors or squeaking floors, get down in that crawl space, check the wood moisture level, check the humidity level before it gets to this, because this is a huge structural issue that has to be addressed now with probably sistering of joists and post jacks and replacing wood. And of course, if you can take care of the mold before it gets to this level, then humidity before it creates mold, you're going to be out less money in order to correct that problem. This is another issue we see a lot, the damage to ductwork. Now, many homes built today have a flex ductwork. They don't have the hard pipe like they used to back in the day, but this is very common in an older home. You can see rust. That rust, it could rust all the way through the ductwork, which leads to loss of energy, and it creates more condensation because of that dew point on this ductwork, which leads to higher utility bills and even pests and different things getting inside the ductwork and going into the living space. Okay, so again, high humidity leads to a lot of different problems, from mold to problems with energy efficiency and comfort, and we'll get into all that. So I just wanted to show this picture. This is another problem that we see. We had to replace this entire duct system after we dried out the crawl space. So I get asked all of the time, what is the best humidity level for my home, for my crawl space, for my basement, my attic? And we lean on the 45 to 55% range. The reason why we have a range is a lot of the dehumidifiers out there use a humidistat, and of course, the humidistat isn't perfect. We figure there's probably a plus or minus 4% error built into the humidistat if it's a pretty good one. It may be even worse if it's a cheap dehumidifier. So that's why I like the 45 to 55% range for controlling humidity. As a matter of fact, when we set a dehumidifier in a crawl space in a basement or in an attic, we will set the dehumidifier at 50%. That way it gives us that 4 to 5% error below or above, and we're still below that 60% mark, which is the mark that most of the mold remediation professionals and the engineers agree is about when mold could start to grow. So we want that humidity around 50%. So as the dehumidifier drops that humidity to 48%, it'll turn off, it'll creep back up to 52, 53%, engage again, and then drop it right back down. So that's why we like the 50% setting on the dehumidifier. And again, if you've got an Aprilaire that's running on dew point, it's taking all of that into consideration. What's the temperature? What's the relative humidity in order to keep the dew point or the condensation from happening inside of the crawl space. So take a look at this chart here. I know you've probably been looking at it while I've been talking. This is the healthy zone right here that we want to focus on for our relative humidity. There is no perfect relative humidity inside of a home, but you can see this 45 to 55% range right in here. That's about as good as you can get whenever you're trying to prevent too much moisture or not enough moisture. Remember, you can actually have your home too dry as well. Too dry can create bacteria and viruses. Too wet can create bacteria and viruses. Too dry can create rhinitis and asthma. Too wet can create rhinitis and asthma. And then you've got ozone and chemical productions. And then you got, obviously mold is too high above that 60% mark. Dust mites get a little high at the 50%. and then start to creep up really high above 70%. So controlling humidity does a lot more than just keep mold from growing. It's really one of the best lines of defense to make sure your home has good indoor air quality across all of these spectrums that ASHRAE lists. And ASHRAE is who came up with this chart, the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers. Their website is ashrae.org, and I'll put a link to that down below if you want to learn more about them. One of the biggest benefits most homeowners and people in our industry don't talk about when controlling humidity is energy efficiency. According to the Department of Energy, controlling moisture can make your home more energy efficient, less costly to heat and cool, more comfortable, and prevent mold growth. So there's quite a bit of benefit from controlling moisture, and that's really what controlling humidity, controlling that dew point is all about. We're going to get into more ways to control moisture in the videos to come. That's why I'm focusing mainly on humidity, because it needs to be the first thing that you get under control inside of your house. There's ways to make controlling humidity more energy efficient, more effective, but you've got to have a dehumidifier. You've got to have different things like that to control that humidity level. If you're in like a really cold region like Wisconsin or Minnesota or something like that, you may have a dehumidifier in the summer and a humidifier in the winter in order to control humidity. Okay, so us here in the South, we don't really need that humidifier as often as they do up in those really super cold climates. But even we get to the point to where maybe a room humidifier. My oldest son, sometimes gets nosebleeds if it gets too dry, so we have a room humidifier to help with keeping the air moist so that it doesn't dry out his nose. But just think about that: controlling moisture, energy efficiency. Less costly to heat and cool, more comfortable, and less mold growth. Those are some great benefits of controlling humidity. I want to focus on comfort real quick for just a second. Most of us don't think about this, but imagine if you are in an office environment or something like that. Let's say that you're in control of an office building. Maybe you work for some big engineering firm or some large corporation. Look at these statistics for controlling comfort inside of the office space. All right, controlling crawl space humidity can help make your home feel more comfortable, but what about large buildings that have humidity and heating and cooling problems as well? Productivity. Studies show a slight reduction in temperature, relative humidity, and indoor air pollutants can increase work productivity by 2 to 4%. Imagine that. 2 to 4% work productivity can be increased by controlling humidity, temperature, and getting better air quality. If you are in a large firm all the way to this family here with their kids, imagine how much more productive the kids are at the dinner table doing their homework, how much more productive you are if you work from home, if you are more comfortable. It's a huge problem that a lot of us face, is being uncomfortable. When you get uncomfortable, you get irritable, you don't like to work. So controlling humidity is a great start to improving comfort inside the home and the office or the school or the church or wherever you may be. I got quite a bit more to share with you here, and one of the things I want to talk to you about right now is that humidity control myth. Again, I never used the fan will control humidity scenario. That's actually a huge myth. If you're going to control humidity, you need some type of dehumidifier or humidifier, depending on if it's too wet or too dry. A fan is only going to blow out what it intakes. Okay, so if you're intaking 70%, you're blowing out 70%. Fans do not control humidity. I know for years they've been used in our industry to control humidity in quotes, but it does not work. It's not effective. You need some kind of humidification or dehumidification in order to do that. In reality, adding more ventilation can add more humidity if you're in an environment like we are here in East Tennessee. It all depends on the source of the makeup air. So if you're taking in a lot of humidity inside the fan and then blowing it into the crawl space, or you're taking a lot of humidity from the crawl space and trying to blow it out, and the humidity outside the makeup air is coming back into the crawl space, so it's recirculating that humidity back through the crawl space. It's a very, very ineffective, if not very damaging way to try to control humidity, because it is not humidity control. What we do is we use fans to control soil gases or to move soil gases out of crawl spaces, not to control humidity. This is a good resource that I'm going to put a link to down below. Should I dehumidify my crawl space? We basically find that in order to keep a crawl space free of humidity, you're going to need at least 3 things, possibly 4. Number 1, you need to make sure that you seal those crawl space vents if you have them. You need to install a dehumidifier, and you need to make sure you have a good vapor barrier or plastic vapor retarder down on, at least covering the earth. All right, but I would take it up the walls and the pillars if you could, because moisture can evaporate through those walls and pillars as well, which means the dehumidifier is going to run more often. So this is one of the top 3 things that you need to do: seal the vents, dehumidifier, install good plastic, and then possibly you may need to control standing water if you got a lot of flooding or whatever inside your crawl space. So I encourage you to check out Should I Dehumidify My Crawl Space? Good resource for you. Another resource I encourage you to take a look at, we have done this both in a video or a blog, so if you like to read, you can check out the Essential Guide to Humidity Control, or you can check out the video, The Essential Guide to Humidity Control, on YouTube or on our blog. So that's it for this video. The next video is going to cover standing water. So we're going to talk about what I think is crawl space problem number 2, which is standing water. And please make sure you leave me some comments on what you thought about this video down below. Hope you'll subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to be putting out this standing water video in about a week or so. So appreciate you watching. I hope you make it a happy and blessed day, and we'll see you later.